What up, my goats? My name is Tote,
And this is Stephen B.
and welcome to another episode of Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone.
Oh, yeah.
Alright, guys, to start things off, if you missed the last episode, you can go ahead and jump on back over to Chapter 3. We're going to be reading Chapter 4 this time. And if you're following along with the immersive experience, you should have either some birthday cake or some sausages.
So, just to recap, last week we had the Mr. Potter and the Dursleys get stuck out in an island out in the middle of the ocean as an attempt to, not be allowed to receive any more of these pesky letters.
Attempt to shake them off.
You got to shake them off. And it was unsuccessful. Harry didn't sleep very well that night. That was most of the chapter.
Mm-hmm.
Was him having insomnia, which sucks.
Okay.
I'm guessing some of the people watching this probably are having trouble sleeping on their own, so...
Do you need like a nightlight?
Yeah, I listen to videos like this as a way to put me to sleep. So I figure that's what somebody out there's
Are
probably
you trying
doing.
to say my videos are boring?
No, not at all.
Okay. Yeah. So, guys, to continue the immersive experience, if you're not familiar with what I'm talking about, in each chapter of the book, there is some sort of food that they eat. They do a lot of eating in this book, and so whenever you hear that little nugget of goodness, go ahead and dive on in. Kind of get you more involved. If you're not subscribed yet, go ahead and click the little subscribe button. It's going to be like right down here somewhere. Ring the little bell notification that's next to it. That way you won't miss out on any of these just pure gold nuggets of video.
Ring my bell. Ring my bell.
Let's just dive on in there. Let's just get on in there. Okay.
Wow.
I need a bookmark.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not hard, but this little piece of M&M wrapper that we've been using, it's not doing the job. All right.
What's this chapter called?
Did a bird just hit the window?
Don't worry about it.
Okay. Well, that's the letters coming, just so you know. I gotta pay attention if my letter's on the way. Alright, guys. This chapter is The Keeper of the Keys. And there's your cover art for the day.
Is that guy
Hope you didn't read ahead. What?
Is that a jackrabbit?
A jackrabbit?
I can't see very well.
Oh.
We've got a dude with a little snorkel thing. No, that's a scarf. And an owl.
Guy wearing a snorkel and an owl.
Well, they're on an island in the middle of the ocean right now.
I guess
So
it could be.
to get out there, you have to have a snorkel.
Yeah, I guess that's a very good possibility. I mean, what do you think's going to happen? It's the Keeper of the Keys.
I'm going to assume there's a guy with a massive keychain, possibly custodial work. We don't know. We'll see.
Okay. Alright, I'll buy it. Let's see. Boom! They knocked again. Dudley jerked awake. "Where's the cannon?" he said stupidly. There was a crash behind them, and Uncle Vernon came skidding into the room. He was holding a rifle in his hands. Now they knew what had been in the long, thin package he had brought with them. "Who's there?" he shouted. "I warn you. I'm armed." Then there was a pause. See what I did there?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. There was a pause. Then, smash! The door was hit with such force that it swung clean off its hinges, and with a deafening crash landed flat on the floor. A giant of a man was standing in the doorway. His face was almost completely hidden by a long, shaggy mane of wild, tangled beard, but you could make out his eyes, glinting like black beetles under all the hair. The giant squeezed his way into the hut, stooping so that his head just brushed the ceiling. He bent down, picked up the door, and fitted it easily back into its frame. The noise of the storm outside dropped a little. He turned to look at them all. "Couldn't make us a cup of tea, could you? That's not been an easy journey." He strode over to the sofa where Dudley sat frozen with fear. "Budge up, you great lump," said the stranger. Dudley squeaked and ran and hid behind his mother, who was crouching, terrified, behind Uncle Vernon. "And here's Harry," said the giant. Harry looked up into the fierce, wild, shadowy face and saw that the beady eyes were crinkled in a smile. "Last time I saw you, you was only a baby," said the giant. "You look a lot like your mom, but you've got your dad's eyes." Is that better? It's more Irish now, isn't it?
More British than
Okay.
it was.
We'll get it. We'll get it right eventually. Or not. We'll see. Stay tuned. "You look a lot like your dad, but you've got your mom's eyes." Uncle Vernon made a funny rasping noise. "I demand you leave at once, sir," he said. "You are breaking and entering."
Entering.
Yeah. "Ah, shut up, Dursley, you great prune," said the giant. He reached over the back of the sofa, jerked the gun out of Uncle Vernon's hands, bent it into a knot as easily as if it had been made of rubber, and then threw it in the corner of the room. Uncle Vernon made another funny noise, like a mouse being trodden on. "Anyway, Harry," said the giant, turning his back on the Dursleys, "a very happy birthday to you. Got something for you. Here, I might have set on it at some point, but it'll taste all right." From the inside pocket of his black overcoat, he pulled a slightly squished box. Harry opened it with trembling fingers. Inside was a large, sticky chocolate cake
Bing.
with "Happy Birthday, Harry" written on it in green icing. Harry looked up at the giant. He meant to say thank you, but the words got lost on the way to his mouth. And what he said instead was, "Who are you?" It's a weird way to say thank you.
Mm-hmm.
The giant chuckled.
That's how they chuckle.
"True, I haven't introduced myself. Rubius Haggard, keeper of keys and grounds at Hogwarts." He held an enormous hand and shook Harry's whole arm. "What about that tea then, eh?" he said, rubbing his hands together. "Man, I should have told you to bring tea. I just got into tea myself." What about the tea, hey? Oh, okay. Here we are. "I'd not say no ter something stronger if you got it, mind ya." His eyes fell on the empty grate with the shriveled chip bags in it, and he snorted. He bent down over the fireplace. Couldn't see what he was doing, but then he drew back a second later. There was a roaring fire there. It filled the whole damp hut with flickering light, and Harry felt the warmth wash over him as though he'd sunk into a hot bath. The giant sat back down on the sofa, which sagged under his weight, and began taking all sorts of things out of his pockets of his coat. A copper kettle, a squishy package of sausages, a poker, a teapot, several chipped mugs, and a bottle of some amber liquid that he took a swig from before starting to make tea. Soon the hut was full of the sound and smell of sizzling sausages. Nobody Nobody said a thing while the giant was working, but as he slid the first 6 fat, juicy, slightly burnt sausages from the poker, Dudley fidgeted a little. Uncle Vernon said sharply, "Don't touch anything he gives you, Dudley." The giant chuckled darkly. "Your great puddin' of a son don't need no fattening up any more, Dursley. Don't you worry." He passed the sausages to Harry, who was so hungry he had never tasted anything so wonderful, but he still couldn't take his eyes off the giant. Finally, as nobody seemed about to explain anything, he said, "I'm sorry. I still don't know who you are." The giant took a gulp of tea and wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. "Call me Haggard," he said. Everyone does. And like I told you, I'm the keeper of the keys at Hogwarts. You'll know all about Hogwarts, of course. No," said Harry. Hagrid looked shocked. "Sorry," Harry said quickly. "Sorry," barked Hagrid, turning to stare at the Dursleys, who sank back into the shadows. It's them that should be sorry. I knew you weren't getting your letters, but I never thought you wouldn't even know about Hogwarts, for crying out loud. Did you never wonder where your parents learned it all?" "Oh, what?" asked Harry. "Oh, what?" Hagrid thundered. "Now, wait just 1 second." He had leapt to his feet. In his anger, he seemed to fill the whole hut. The Dursleys were cowering against the wall. "Do you mean to tell me," he growled at the Dursleys, "that this boy knows nothing about anything? He knows nothing about nothing?" Harry thought this was going a bit far. He had been to school after all. His marks weren't bad. "I know some things," he said. "I can, do math and stuff."
Yeah, right, math and stuff, okay.
But Hagrid simply waved his hand and said, "About our world. I mean your world, my world, your parents' world." Hagrid looked as if he was about to explode. "Dursley," he boomed. Uncle Vernon, who had gone very pale, whispered something that sounded like, "Mimbly Wimbly." Hagrid stared wildly at Harry. "But you must know about your mom and dad," he said. "I mean, they're famous. You're famous." "What? My mom and dad were famous? Were they? You don't know? You don't know?" Hagrid ran his fingers through his hair, fixing Harry with a bewildered stare. "You don't know what you are?" he said finally. Uncle Vernon suddenly found his voice. "Stop," he commanded. "Stop right there, sir. I forbid you to tell the boy anything." Okay, I'm just saying.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you could have this whole moment, and then this giant just walk out, and Uncle Vernon be like, "Don't ask any more questions."
Yeah.
About that whole thing. No big deal. We're just going to go back to our house. Stay in the cupboard.
That was a dream. Never happened.
Yep. A braver man than Vernon Dursley would have quilled under the furious look Hagrid now gave him. When Hagrid spoke, his every syllable trembled with rage. "You never told him what was in the letter Dumbledore left for him. I was there. I saw Dumbledore leave it. Dursley, and you've kept it from him for all these years." "Kept what from me?" said Harry eagerly. "Stop! I forbid you!" yelled Uncle Vernon in a panic. Aunt Petunia gave a gasp of horror. "Ah, go boil your heads, both of you," said Hagrid. "I don't know what that means." "Harry, you're a wizard." There was a silence inside the hut. Only the sea and the whistling wind could be heard. "I'm a what?" gasped Harry. "A wizard, of course," said Hagrid, sitting back down on the sofa with a groan, and sank even lower. "And a thumping good 'un, I'd say, once you've been trained up a bit. With a mum and dad like yours, what else could you be? And I'd reckon it's about time you read your letter." Harry stretched out his hand at last to take the yellowish envelope, inscrolled in emerald green, "To Mr. H. Potter, the floor, hut on the rock, the sea." He pulled out the letter and read, "Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Headmaster Albus Dumbledore. Order of Merlin, First Class, Grand Sorcerer, Chief Warlock, Supreme Mugwump, International Confederacy of Wizards. Dear Mr. Potter, we are pleased to inform you that you have been accepted at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Please find enclosed a list of all necessary books and equipment. Term begins on September 1st. We await your owl by no later than July 31st. Yours sincerely, Minerva McGonagall, Deputy Headmistress."
She's got an advance since we last seen her.
Oh, yeah?
At first she was just a professor.
Well, I don't think it's gonna be like Deputy Headmistress McGonagall, Deputy Headmistress McGonagall. Like, yeah. It's kind of like they don't say Headmaster Dumbledore, Headmaster Dumbledore, Headmaster Dumbledore. Questions exploded inside Harry's head like fireworks, and he couldn't decide which to ask first. After a few minutes, he stammered, "What does it mean, they wait my owl?" "Galloping goblins, that reminds me," said Hagrid, clapping a hand to his forehead with enough force to knock over a cart horse. And from yet another pocket inside his coat, he pulled out an owl. A real live, rather ruffled-looking owl. A long quill and a roll of parchment. With his tongue between his teeth, he scribbled a note that Harry could read upside down. "Dear Professor Dumbledore, given Harry his letter. Taking him to buy his things tomorrow. Weather's horrible. Hope you're well. Hagrid." Hagrid rolled up the note, gave it to the owl, which clamped it in its beak, went to the door, and he went to... I love this. Oh. Hagrid rolled up the note, gave it to the owl, which clamped it in its beak, went to the door, and threw the owl out into the storm. Then he came back and sat down as though it was normal as talking on the telephone. Harry realized his mouth was open and closed it quickly. "Where was I?" said Hagrid. But at that moment, Uncle Vernon, still ashen-faced, but looking very angry, moved into the firelight. "He's not going," he said. Hagrid grunted. "I'd like to see a great muggle like yourself stop him," he said. "A what?" said Harry, interested. "A muggle," said Hagrid. "It's what we call non-magic folk, like them. And it's your bad luck you grew up in a family of the biggest muggles I've ever laid eyes on. We swore when we took him in, we'd put a stop to all that rubbish," said Uncle Vernon. "Swore we'd stamp it out of him. Wizard indeed." "You knew?" said Harry. "You knew I'm a wizard?" "Knew!" shrieked Aunt Petunia, suddenly. "Knew? Of course we knew. How could you not be? My dratted sister, being what she was. Oh, she got a letter just like that, and disappeared off to that school, and come home every vacation with her pockets full of frog spawn, turning teacups into rats. I was the only one who saw her for what she was. A freak! But for my mother and father, oh no, it was Lily this and Lily that, and they're proud of having a witch in the family." She stopped to drop a deep breath, and then went ranting on. It seemed she had been wanting to say all this for years. Then she met that Potter at school. They left and got married and had you. And of course, I knew you'd be the same, just as strange, just as abnormal. And then, if you please, she went and got herself blown up, and we got landed with you. Harry had gone very white. As soon as he found his voice, he said, "Blown up? You told me they died in a car crash." "Car crash?" roared Hagrid, jumping up angrily that the Dursleys scuttled back into their corner. "How could a car crash kill Lily and James Potter? It's an outrage. It's a scandal. Harry Potter not knowing his own story when every kid in the world knows his name?" You enjoy this book a lot more now, don't you? "But why? What happened?" Harry asked urgently. The anger faded from Hagrid's face. He looked suddenly anxious. "I never expected this," he said, in a low, worried voice. "I had no idea when Dumbledore told me that there might be trouble getting hold of you, how much you didn't know. Harry, I don't know if I'm the right person to tell you, but someone's got to. You can't go off to Hogwarts not knowing." He threw a dirty look at the Dursleys. "Well, it's best you know as much as I can tell you. Mind, I couldn't tell you everything. It's a great mystery, parts of it." He sat down, stared into the fire for a few seconds, and then said, "It begins, I suppose, with a person called... But it's incredible, you don't know his name. Everybody in our world knows who. Well, I don't like saying his name if I can help it. No one does. Why not? Gulp and gargoyles, Harry. People are still scared. Blind me, this is difficult. See, there was this wizard who went bad. As bad as you can go. Worse. Worse than worse. His name was..." Hagrid gulped, but no words came out. "Could you write it down?" Harry suggested. "Nah, I can't spell it." "All right. Voldemort." Harry shuddered. "Don't make me say it again. Anyway," Hagrid shuddered. "Don't make me say it again. Anyway, this wizard, about 20 years ago now, started looking for followers. Got 'em too. Some were afraid. Some just wanted a bit of his power, because he was getting himself power all right. Dark days, Harry. Don't know who to trust. Don't dare get friendly with stranger wizards or witches. Terrible things happened. He was taken over, of course. Some stood up to him, and he killed him. Horribly. One of the only safe places left was Hogwarts. Reckon Dumbledore's the only one who was afraid of. Didn't dare try taking the school, not just then anyway. Now your mom and dad were as good a witch and wizard as I ever knew. Head boy and girl at Hogwarts in their day. Suppose the mystery is why who tried to get 'em on his side before. Probably knew they were too close to Dumbledore to want anything to do with the dark side. Maybe he thought he could persuade him. Maybe he just wanted him out of the way. All anyone knows is he turned up in the village where you was living on Halloween 10 years ago. You were just 1 year old. You were just a year old. He came to your house and sorry, he said. Well, Hagrid suddenly pulled out a very dirty, spotted handkerchief and blew his nose with a sound like a foghorn. "Sorry," he said, "but it's that sad. Knew your mom and dad and nicer people you couldn't find anywhere. You know who killed him. And this is where the real mystery of things. He tried to kill you too. Wanted to make a clean job of it, I suppose, or maybe he just liked killing by then. But he couldn't do it. Never wondered how you got that mark on your forehead? That's no ordinary cut. That's what you get when a powerful evil curse touches you. Took care of your mom and dad in your house, even, but it took care of your mom and dad and your house. But it didn't work on you. That's why you're famous, Harry. No one's ever lived after he decided to kill him. No one except you. And he'd killed some of the best witches and wizards of the age. The McKinnons, the Bones, the Pruitts. And you was only a baby, and you lived. Something very painful was going on in Harry's mind. As Hagrid's story came to a close, he saw again the blinding flash of green light, more clearly than he had ever remembered it before, and he remembered something else for the first time in his life, a high, cold, cruel laugh. Hagrid was watching him sadly. Took you from your ruined house myself, on Dumbledore's orders, brought you to this lot. A load of old tosh, said Uncle Vernon. Harry jumped. He had almost forgotten that Dursleys were there. Uncle Vernon certainly seemed to have got back his courage. He was glaring at Hagrid and his fists were clenched. Now you listen here, boy, he snarled. I expect there's something strange about you. Probably nothing a good beating wouldn't have cured. And as for all of this about your parents, well, they were weirdos, no denying it, and the world's better off without them in it, in my opinion. Ask for all they've got, getting mixed up with these wizarding types. Just what I expected. Always knew they'd come out to a sticky end. But at that moment, Hagrid leaped from the sofa and drew a battered pink umbrella from his inside of his coat. Pointing this at Uncle Vernon like a sword, he said, I'm warning you, Dursley. I'm warning you one more word.
Yeah.
In danger of being speared on the end of a pink umbrella by a bearded giant, Uncle Vernon's courage failed again. He flattened himself against the wall and fell silent. That's better, said Hagrid, breathing heavily and sitting back down on the sofa, which this time sagged right down to the floor. Harry, meanwhile, still had questions to ask, hundreds of them. But what happened to you know who? Good question, Harry. Disappeared, vanished. Same night he tried to kill you. Makes you even more famous. That's the biggest mystery, see? He was getting more and more powerful. Why'd he go? Some say he died. Codswallop, my opinion. Don't know if he had enough human left in him to die. Some say he's still out there, biding his time, but I don't believe it. People who was on his side came back to ours. Some of them came out of kind of trances. Don't reckon they could have done if he was coming back. Most of us reckon he's still out there somewhere, but lost his powers. Too weak to carry on. 'Cause something about you finished him, Harry. There was something going on that night he hadn't counted on. I don't know what it was. No one does. But something about you stumped him all right. Hagrid looked at Harry with warmth and respect blazing in his eyes. But Harry, instead of feeling pleased and proud, felt quite sure there had been a terrible mistake. A wizard? Him? How could he possibly be? He'd spent his life being clouded by Dudley and bullied by Aunt Petunia and Uncle Vernon. If he was really a wizard, why hadn't they been turned into warty toads every time they tried to lock him into the cupboard? If he'd once defeated the greatest sorcerer in the world, how come Dudley had always been able to kick him around like a football.
Is that an American football?
Yeah.
Or British one?
I think that's actually a British one. Hagrid, he said... Oh. Hagrid, he said quietly. I think you might have made a mistake. I don't think I can be a wizard. To his surprise, Hagrid chuckled. Not a wizard, huh? Never made things happen when you was scared or angry? Harry looked into the fire. Now come to think of it, every odd thing that had ever made his aunt and uncle furious with him had happened to him when every odd thing that had ever made his aunt and uncle furious with him had happened when he, Harry, had been upset or angry. Chased by Dudley's gang, he had somehow found himself out of their reach. Dreading going to school with that ridiculous haircut, he managed to make it grow back. And the very last time Dudley had hit him, he'd gotten his revenge without even realizing it. He was doing it. Hadn't he set a boa constrictor on him? Hagrid looked back at... Dang it. Harry looked back at Hagrid smiling and saw that Hagrid was positively beaming at him. See, said Hagrid. Harry Potter, not a wizard. You wait. You'll be right famous at Hogwarts. But Uncle Vernon wasn't going to give in without a fight. Haven't I told you? He's not going, he hissed. He's going to Stonewall High, and he'll be grateful for it. I've read those letters, and he needs all sorts of rubbish. Spell books and wands, and if he wants to go, a great muggle like you won't stop him, growled Hagrid. Stop Lily and James Potter's son from going to Hogwarts? You're mad! His name's been down ever since he was born. He's off to the finest school of witchcraft and wizardry in the world. 7 years there, and he won't know himself. He'll be with youngsters of his own sort for a change, and he'll be under the greatest headmaster Hogwarts has ever had, Albus Dumbledore. I'm not paying for some crackpot old fool to teach him magic tricks, yelled Uncle Vernon. But he had finally gone too far. Hagrid seized his umbrella and whirled it overhead. Never, he thundered, insult Albus Dumbledore in front of me. He brought the umbrella swooshing down through the air to the point at Dudley. There was a flash of violet light, a sound like a firecracker, and a sharp squeal, and the next second Dudley was dancing around on the spot with his hands clasped over his fat bottom, howling in pain. When he turned his back on them, Harry saw a curly pig's tail pointing out through a hole in his trousers. Uncle Vernon roared, pulling Aunt Petunia Dudley into the other room. He cast one last terrifying look at Harry and slammed the door behind them. Hagrid looked down his umbrella and stroked his beard. Shouldn't have lost me temper like that, he said ruefully. But it didn't work anyway. Meant to turn him into a pig, but I suppose he was so much like a pig anyway, there wasn't much left to do. He cast a sideways look at Harry under his bushy eyebrows. Be grateful if you didn't mention that to anyone at Hogwarts, he said. I'm not supposed to do magic, strictly speaking. I was allowed to do a bit to follow you, and get your letter to you and stuff. One of the reasons I was so keen. Oh well, I was at Hogwarts myself, but I got expelled. To tell you the truth, in my 3rd year, they snapped me wand in half and everything. But Dumbledore let me stay as a gamekeeper. Great man, Dumbledore. Why were you expelled? It's getting late, and we've got lots to do tomorrow, said Hagrid loudly. Got to get up to town and get all your books in that. He took off his thick black cloak and threw it to Harry. You can keep under that, he said. Don't mind if it wriggles a bit. I think I still got a couple of dormice in one of the pockets. And that is the chapter for this episode.
Very good.
Next episode is going to be Diagon Alley. And In that episode, they dine on some very scrumptious hamburgers.
Sounds
Steve's favorite.
good. Sounds real good.
All right.
Although there's a pretty good one. I like the fighting between the two fellas.
Yeah. I'm really, really excited for the next chapter because this is the first. That was the last chapter you had ever heard, right?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
the last one I've ever heard. So from now on, we are on the same page. Me and the YouTube viewers.
Right. So I'm very, very excited. Also, I feel like we stopped at a good spot before we started videotaping because like we're already getting a little bit into the wizarding world, but the next chapter you like get into the wizarding world. So, book really starts picking up. We're actually like we've got a pretty good chunk out of it, so I would say we're probably after the next chapter, we're about a quarter of the way through the book.
Wow.
Right? Well, Owen
pretty
Wilson
impressive.
there. Wow.
I don't think it sounds like him at all.
Questions? Comments?
Um,
Nothing?
I did have a question. He used a word that I'd never heard of before.
Okay.
So I don't know. I thought it was interesting.
Muggle. It's a non-magic folk.
We heard
Like yourself.
Muggle earlier, and Mr. Dursley was offended by it. And now I think I'm kind of offended by it, to be honest. From the way it was explained, I think I'm offended by it. But
This is never mentioned in the books. It's just in Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. But Muggle is a British non-magical word. So, like, in America, they also have wizards and witches, and they have Evermorny, which is the wizarding school in America. And we actually use No Maj in America.
oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because I'm an American, that makes sense. If I was British, I would think a Muggle would make more sense than a Nomad.
I'm sure you would. All right, guys. Don't forget your hamburgers next time whenever you're watching the video with us. And drop us a comment down below.
And which would you rather be called, a Muggle or a Nomad?
All right. Muggle or no match? That is the big question this time. And so until next time, catch you on the flip side.